Hey there, Colts fans. This is Nathan Brown, your Colts insider for the Indianapolis Star, joined by my coworker and co-beat mate, Joel A. Erickson, for another edition for the First Impressions podcast here following the Colts' 20-16 loss at home to the Houston Texans. It was our first trip back to Lucas Oil Stadium since more than a month. This was my just second game covering the Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium. I remember joined the beat on October 20th. It has been a long time since we've been able to get back here, and we have a lot to cover, a lot to talk about, a lot of similar trends, quite frankly, that we've seen over the last several weeks. The Colts dropped their third loss in 4 games, fall to 8-4, and they have now relinquished control of the AFC South race. They are technically tied with the Jacksonville Jaguars at 8-4, but would lose on a tiebreaker if the playoffs started today. A lot to dive into, to dissect in this loss that in some ways was different, but all in all the same from the results standpoint here. Joel will, before we get into it, initial thoughts or reactions to what we saw on the field a couple hours ago.
Yeah, I kind of think that this is always the first impressions. You know, it's subject to change here a little bit, but to me, this is kind of the time to worry podcast.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
We've been unsure about that over the last couple of weeks, and feeling like, okay, they're still 8-3. It's a weird team to think about because on the surface, they're 8-4. They're still in playoff position. They still have a chance. It just the way things are going, and with them going to a godforsaken place where the Colts never win next week, and then at Seattle looming after that. It just feels like they're not handling this really tough stretch of the schedule well. They're not far off. It's not like they're getting blown out in these games. And in a lot of ways, I still feel like, what we thought was better about this team, that this team was better than it had been last year. I feel like a lot of that stuff is still true. They didn't, just in terms of them blowing out bad teams, some of what we've seen from the offense, that kind of stuff. At the same time, just the way it's going, no Sauce Gardner, presumably for at least a couple of weeks after he described as he felt a gunshot to his leg in the high calf region. He kind of downplayed it. I don't think he thinks it's like super serious, but I still think he's going to miss some time. That's really your 2 best defensive players, Buckner and Gardner are out. Like I said, just the schedule doesn't match up well. It just kind of feels like it's slipping away from the Colts a little bit, and that's where I'm at. This is officially time to worry. Lose 3 of 4. A lot of that has to do with the division. The Jaguars are now in the AFC South driver's seat. The Texans are 1 game behind, so some of that is part of it. But really, it's just you can just kind of feel it slipping away, and it's not like they've been awful the last couple of weeks overall, but they're not getting wins, and the schedule doesn't do anything for you. It just kind of feels like their back is against the wall, which is a strange thing to be saying about an 8-4 team, but that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, it brings me back a little bit to, frankly, my first week on the beat. They won, I think it was like 38-14 over the Texans at home at Lucas Oil Stadium. They were averaging 33 or whatever points a game. Jonathan Taylor was being talked about in MVP conversations. Frankly, Daniel Jones was even in some MVP conversations, and it makes me wonder, there are those moments when an offense and a team at large is doing so well, and you look at the schedule and you're like, but they've done this against the Titans a couple times, and they shellacked the Raiders, and They won a close game with the Cardinals, and you don't want to be that Debbie Downer that's like, yeah, like you're putting up incredible numbers, but should we look at the teams that you're doing it against? And I don't think that anyone was really calling that into question, but hindsight's 2020, and it really makes you wonder, like, was this I mean, we were talking about this Colts offense as like one of the best offenses of the century. Like with the 1999 Rams team and the 2007 Patriots team, like this team was in like vaunted territory, and it has fallen straight back to earth, right, as they have begun to play some really tough defenses, week in, week out, all teams bringing some different schemes and some different strengths to those matchups, and just haven't really been able to overcome that. The defense, we can get into more of this here in just a second. Like in my mind, I don't really feel like the defense has largely been the problem. I mean, it's a group that's kind of gonna, for the most part, no matter who you're playing, gonna give up 17 to 25 points, and for better or worse, it's a group that needs the offense to score somewhere around 23 to 30 points to win, or at least have you in it. And the offense just hasn't put up that level of production over these last couple weeks. Granted, against very good defenses and good defensive coordinators, but it just really has felt like this offense hasn't quite met the moment as things have ramped up a little bit, and they're only going to get tougher, quite frankly, when you look at who is left here on the board.
Yeah, they've got a ton of work to do. The interesting thing is that to some degree, a little bit different things going wrong in different games here, but yeah, it does feel like they're in danger of letting this thing slip away, and I don't know where that leaves this team going forward. But first we have to get through there. So let's get through this game and move on. But yes, I would say that I think Colts fans, are starting to kind of feel like I think part of it is just like it's not just the fans who I think there's a certain segment of the fan base, the vocal ones on social media, that they kind of just hate the Colts. Like they like the Colts, but they hate the Colts. They're never happy with them.
Those folks were like smashing the panic button after the Steelers game. And I think we were coming off of that thinking like, hey, this is one game. Lots of teams have like a freak weird loss, a game that they still only lost by 7 points despite having 6 turnovers. Like, I didn't feel that way coming off this. I felt like a lot of that was really premature, but maybe those were
now I think the rest of the fan base, maybe they don't feel like the same level of anger, but definitely I think the apprehension creeps in, some nerves. You kind of feel it. You look at the schedule going forward and you go, okay, now I'm back to maybe where I was at the start of the season, where I'm not really sure what I think is going to happen with this team, and maybe I feel the doubt creeping in. I think that's kind of where we are with this Colts season right now.
Yeah, it's because it's hard to definitively say where the wins are going to come from. I think we entered this 7-game closing stretch feeling like there were just as good of odds of this team winning all 7 as they were losing all 7 in some respects, because they were all against very good playoff caliber teams, all against teams, frankly, that are in the hunt for playoff positions, including some really tough road games like Jacksonville, Seattle, the Chiefs. And so there was a lot of promise entering this stretch, because it felt like if they weathered this storm, you were going to come away feeling like they were ready to beat and play anyone in the playoffs. And now we've seen a really tough road game and frankly a really tough home game as well. And they've lost both of them. And there hasn't been any one single thing that has been the problem, or really even the through line to either of those either. So let's break into things here for the First Impressions podcast. Our villain of the game. Who did you have for your villain here from Sunday afternoon?
I think this is like like the stadium kind of said this for me. It's the referees.
Yeah.
Specifically the back judge. You know, the he made there's a bunch of calls. There's some face masks that I think, you know, I'd have to look at again, but maybe could have gone either way. You could call it, you could not call it. There were 3 that I had to do. I think people on the podcast know that I'm the pool reporter for Indianapolis, which is not a great job if you've seen the answers. And I'm going to extend this real quick. So there's three calls right in a row that are pretty questionable, controversial. They didn't call a delay of game. The Texans snapped the ball like a full second after the clock was done. On the same play, they called Kenny Moore for pass interference. It's just a bad call. This is a terrible call. I'll get here to a second, like what the referee said about it. I'm with Cam Bynum, who said it was 100% clean. I just don't understand how you can make this call in any game. It doesn't even matter what the situation is. It doesn't, like, it's an egregious miss to me. And then there's this weird extra point where, I mean, I've seen the tape. It looks exactly like it's gone wide left from the copy I've seen. I did have one person tweet back at me something from the other side and said it was obvious. I don't think it was obvious. But here's the other thing. It's not just the calls. This is also the NFL's refereeing process of accountability and the way they handle these things is terrible. This is maybe a little bit of a personal rant, but as the pool reporter, it's my job to ask the questions. They kind of it's like talking to people who are operating in a different universe than you are, where the calls were very obvious and there's nothing to explain. Like the explanation on the Moore play was that there was an arm grab. If you go back and look at it, his hand makes contact with his arm. I think calling it interference, even holding, is
especially on a play where, like, the issue is he loses his footing and he falls.
Yeah, and it's also just kind of ridiculous from like there's hand fighting on literally every play. Like there was stuff that wasn't called where Alec Pierce was in contact. I think they probably would have said, you know, that hand fighting is incidental. Like the contact Moore made with Xavier Hutchinson's hand is it's so small. I don't understand that one. The way they talk about it is as if it's like very obvious to everyone. The extra point was clearly and wholly inside the upright, according to the referees. I don't think that's true based on what I've seen. You could maybe convince me that there's an angle thing and it doesn't look the same way, but I don't think you can convince me that it was very obvious. And then the delay of game penalty is the same way. They said you're supposed to look and see the snap and look up and, you know, or you're supposed to look at the clock and then look and see is the ball gone. And if the ball's gone for the snap, like if you watch it back, like it would have to be the slowest look down in history. So
So in the NBA, are you supposed to like wait until you see zeros on the clock and then look down immediately after and see if the ball is not in the guy's hand? That's just not how that works.
Yeah, and the NBA is an interesting point here to bring up too, because like they do the last 2-minute report, and you get all these calls that they were like, you know, this should have been this should have been this. You know, I think it kind of sucks when you're an NBA fan and your team's on the wrong end of that, and it's like, oh, so they did mess this up, and we can't go back and change it and maybe win the game. But it sucks a lot worse when you get the answers that we get in the NFL, which is just, no, everything we did was perfect. There's nothing to question.
So I've not been on, you know, the end of asking those questions, but it comes off to me, someone with a journalism background, but also not someone who's been in your shoes in that part of the process specifically. Like you're going in to ask the questions, trying to better understand a play, and there's just like a presumption that they were absolutely 100% of the time automatically right. Like it doesn't seem like there's any situation where they are going to admit that they might have screwed up a call. And I understand, like, you don't want to throw your referees under the bus minutes after a game. Like there's reason that the NBA's 2-minute report comes out 24 hours later instead of, under an hour later. Like there needs to be time to fully analyze all of that. But it just feels like they're approaching it in a way where they're just saying, this is why we know we're right, instead of actually answering the questions that are being asked.
Yeah, and this other thing happened. So this is another maybe peel behind the process of why it's bad. Like, I have to submit what play exactly I'm talking about, and exactly what call I'm talking about. So like, I couldn't just say the Kenny Moore play and to have them be okay with me asking questions about the delay of game and the pass interference. I had to say both the delay of game and pass interference, even though they both happened on the exact same play. And if you don't submit those questions, there's kind of an expectation that you're not going to ask about something else. Like, do you feel like there were face masks that were missed, which is a reasonable call, but I didn't necessarily have those calls felt more subjective, which makes it a little hard. As you guys can see from the answers, like anything that's even remotely subjective is very difficult to ask questions about. But yeah, the other thing is, like, you sort of, like, I went into the Moore question expecting to ask a follow-up about tripping a player, because it looked like, I think to most of us, that if anything happened, their feet got tangled up. But then they just say, well, there was a hand grab. And so you're like on the phone in the bowels of the stadium and you're like, a hand grab? I don't remember an arm grab, like an egregious arm grab. And there's no point in asking a follow-up about feet getting tangled up, because that's not why they say they made the call. And yeah, it's not a good process. It's designed to minimize referee calls as much as possible, and instead of like the NBA thing, which is at least seems to be designed to give some transparency, some recourse for a team if they feel like a call was something. Like it just feels like the NFL is just like, yeah, no, we nailed it. I don't know why you're asking the questions. And the other thing is it's not in person; it's on the phone, even though we're in the same building.
Of course, yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the, what the NFL could do something similar to, a last 2-minute report, because it's not necessarily, and maybe I guess this is probably the case for the NBA too. So maybe it just is what it is, but it's the plays that hold a major amount of weight aren't necessarily taking place just in the final 2 minutes of an NFL game. So I don't know what the solution is there. I mean, it's so very different from basketball, where possessions, instead of happening every 30 seconds, they're happening every 5 or 6 minutes. So like that doesn't, you can't just go apples to apples. I don't know if it's teams having the ability to flag X number of plays to get answers on, and those come publicly, or I mean, heck, even if they're private or like semi-private, and we can ask teams what explanations they got, and maybe there's certain plays that they're allowed or able to talk about a little bit more freely without a risk of getting fined. I don't know what the answer is, but I just hate that so often, again, it's a subjective job. It's not an easy one. I don't think it's one that anyone really wishes that they had necessarily, but it's just a real shame that we feel like we can't get answers, or even just like reasonable explanations, or reasonable admittance of messing up and making a mistake.
The other thing is you're often you're talking to the head referee. You're not. In this case, the calls were made on the delay of game and the pass interference. I believe both of those calls were made by the back judge. I know for a fact the delay of game is the back judge because he said it, but the other one he said the calling official. As I remembered, it was the referee standing underneath the goalpost. I don't talk to him. I talk to the head referee. It's not a good system. It's not a good system. Like I said, it's a system designed to minimize questions of refereeing in a football game. And it's not designed to give any sort of transparency whatsoever. This is either my second or third year being the pool reporter. It doesn't come up as often as you'd think, because the other thing is because of we know how these answers go, it raises the level of like what rises to the level of should we ask a question about, because we know what they're going to do. We know what they're going to say. And so, like, sometimes it's like, I didn't like that call, but it's a holding call. And we know they're just going to say he held him. You know, like, it's part of the system is that it also makes it so you have to answer fewer questions, which is bad. It's just bad. There's got to be a better way to do it. So I think mine is a double villain. It's the referees today and the refereeing system as a whole.
Yeah, I also hate too, like when you've got a group that seemingly isn't really truly willing to, I don't know if I would say answer truthfully, but just like answer openly and honestly questions in this whole process. Meanwhile, you have the folks that were participating in the game feeling like they can't even talk about the play at all and just give like an honest opinion, because
Shane Steichen and Kenny Moore both felt like they couldn't say anything.
Yeah, like you've got refs that I don't think we feel like are being like truly open and honest with us, and are kind of just using what evidence they feel like they can support to back up what happened instead of the opposite of how that process should be. And you've got a coach who can't, again, I know, a coach or a player shouldn't go, using a bunch of 4-letter words and have that type of rant to reporters publicly on the record. But like Shane Steichen, and again, I'm sure there are different coaches that maybe approach this differently, and maybe Shane is just being extra cautious, but like, I don't even get the sense that you can say, I disagree with them. I think they made the wrong call there because XYZ, and just have like a very frank, like well-mannered, sharing of your opinion, saying, hey, I think this guy who has a subjective call made the wrong call because they think that looks poor on the league and the officiating crew. I think that's a shame.
I think the other thing about it is I think most people think, well, they don't want to get fined. I think it's larger than that, though.
Yeah.
I think it's less about the fine and more about being worried that you'll end up on the wrong end of a referee's biases going into the next game or down the road. And that's even worse. Like that's if that's what they're concerned about, and no one said that to me, but like, I just don't think that the fines are such a big deal that like I used to cover Sean Payton, who's famous for saying lots of things on the record. He also frequently would do what Shane did today, and I don't think the fine is what mattered to him. I think there's a concern of, do you end up on the wrong side of the NFL officiating office? And that's dumb. That's bad. That's bad for the integrity of the game. It's bad for the referees if they wield that kind of power where, well, if you complain about something I screwed up, it might hurt you down the road.
100%. On to an equally potentially deep topic for my villain. I hate it. And I know that it was a play early in the game. There were dozens of plays on both sides of the ball that took place after it. But when you come down to it and you look at how the Colts' final drive played out, and the deficit in the game, Michael Badgley's missed extra point looms real large here. And frankly, it's just something you can't have happen on a team with aspirations as tall as the Colts have. we can, and I imagine probably will dive into it. Like I don't like that I don't have a great definitive solution to this problem, but it's becoming a problem, and I don't think it's one that the Colts can go into this, super difficult post end of the regular season stretch and postseason stretch without at least at minimum exploring a change, something that they definitively said that they would not do after Badgley's missed PAT in Atlanta when this cropped up most recently against it.
Yeah, and I know so here's another thing about this stupid I'm ranting a little bit about the Pooh report, but I do it like while Shane's talking. So you were in for more of it than I was, but it felt like Shane Steichen's tone had shifted considerably on this. I believe what he said was, whoever we have in there has to make the kicks.
Yeah, he said I love Badge, but he's got to make those, something to that effect, and it's very uncommon. Again, this is just my fifth or sixth game on the beat, so you can speak to this much better. But I get the sense Shane is very, very rarely going to, kind of like the NFL officiating crew, ever go publicly and say that one of his players did something wrong, or say that they were at fault, or really that they shoulder any significant level of blame in the situation. He's always going to be someone who's going to say, look, we all made mistakes, or we all fell short, and that starts with me, and I need to be better. I need to call better plays. I need to call a better game that puts my players in a better position to succeed. And he went out there and said, look, I love the guy, but he's got to make those. And the telling way he phrased the final half of that sentence was, and we believe in whoever is out there for us. It wasn't we're going to stick with Badge. It was whoever we trot out there at place kicker, who may or may not be Michael Badgley next week when we travel to Jacksonville, is going to be someone that we're going to have faith in. And we had faith in him when we rolled him out there today, and whoever it is that is playing for us in 7 days, we will also have faith in.
Yeah, that's how I read it too. The hard part here is that there's been a lot since Age caught up with Adam Vinatieri. There's been an enormous amount to criticize for the Colts kicking decisions. There are some missed opportunities along the way. Chase McLaughlin is one of those. There have been some, really bad misses in free agency with Matt Gay. Some of this, there's been a lot. Like I said, there's been a ton to criticize with the Colts kicking situation coming into this year. The hard part about this year is that they had a good kicker. Mm-hmm. Spencer Schrader, we had one miss. He had generally been very, very good for them. And unfortunately, a late hit by a Raiders player ended his season and tore his ACL, tore his MCL, put him in recovery. And the hard part is it feels like there's only like 20, maybe 18 to 24-ish actual starting NFL kickers in any year.
And a couple of them are always injured.
And sometimes they fall out and sometimes they get in, and like sometimes they fall out of that count and sometimes they come back in, but like it just feels like it's somewhere around that number. And that basically means that any team that has a kicking problem just kind of has a kicking problem. And there's no way around it, because if you can go look at the names, I think Harrison Mevis is kicking for the Rams. I don't know how he's doing, but a lot of the names they tried out, if you look at them, you go, I don't feel like that would improve the situation at all. I do think it's time to make a change. You can't bet on a kicker's accuracy inside the 50-yard line and have 3 missed extra points in 7 games.
Yep.
And then he's not doing what they brought him in to do. So I think you make a change here. But the hard part is whoever they get, unless that person catches a heater and really gets lucky for the back half of the season, the last couple games of the season, it's going to be a flawed option. There's no way around it. There's no one out there that's not a flawed option. and I'm not just talking about like I know some people are going to throw out Justin Tucker. He was bad last year as a football player. Like we can get into the awfulness of the accusations against him and why the Colts shouldn't bring him in from that point, but he wasn't good as a kicker either. So, like there's just not good options for the Colts. But I do think they need to make a change.
Yeah, I don't know enough about what the landscape is out there, but and I think the thought when you're bringing in Michael Badgley is he should be or is going to be, clearly has not quite been super reliable under 50 and doesn't quite have the leg of a lot of these kickers in the league now who are making 60-yarders look super duper easy. I mean, the odd thing is he hit a couple 50-plus yarders in the Steelers game that felt very out of character in not super cold, but like outdoor conditions when it was maybe like 50 degrees, like not like prime. You and I would maybe think it's prime football weather to cover, but not necessarily to play in for the most optimal conditions. But you just can't go into PATs thinking like, gosh, I hope the guy makes it, because it's supposed to be, it's like a free throw. And again, not every single NBA player is going to make all their free throws. But it's all, I guess you would almost call it like a layup. It's one of the few things that they work on. It is the same length every single time. He was indoors, like it wasn't a conditions thing. He just like flat out shanked it. It looked, I'd have to watch it back to see if there was anything weird about the hold or the snap or the placement, but it didn't seem to me like there was anything in the moment weird about it. And it was not even really relatively close. I guess it did cross or did catch the upright. But if it was even just a couple yards back, it wouldn't have even caught that. So
it felt like when you're golfing and you hit one straight, but you hit it straight down the left side of the fairway into a tree. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. That's just when you are, and I think we've said this in the press box probably a time or two over the last couple of games. Like I think felt pretty confident that at some point, we weren't quite sure when or how, but this was going to cost the Colts game. And it's still a little bit of a stretch to say this cost them the game when this happens in the first half. But when it comes down to it, again, he would have had to still make a 49-yarder to tie the game. So that's, again, by no means is that a gimme for Michael Badgley. But if he makes that extra point there in the first half on the Colts' first touchdown, all of a sudden that drive there for them, I think, feels a little bit different. I asked Daniel Jones the question after the game, and maybe he was just, maybe in a way, he's trying to say something that was not throwing any of his teammates under the bus. But I have to think when you are starting that last drive of the Colts and you need 3 points versus needing 7, I just have to think that maybe even just on maybe the second or third down plays there before they ultimately turned it over on downs, maybe those play calls are a little different, because you're not needing, you don't have to pick up all those yards there. And I wonder if the sequencing or the pacing is just a little bit different. And there were other opportunities there where the Colts could have gotten more points on the board earlier. There were a couple turnover on down moments. Again, some of those didn't necessarily happen before the missed PAT, but it feels like it's hard to say that this game isn't different if that is made, and that's ultimately something that's got to come through for a kicker.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
All right, unsung villain, who you have there?
My unsung villain is Laiatu Latu. This is a game where the Texans. So here, the Texans are a pretty simple team when you look at it. It is a very, very good, probably the best in the league defense. It is a not great offense. You've got Stroud coming off of the bye. or that not the bye, coming off of being out for three weeks with a concussion, and he should be rusty. And he was holding the ball. And the way you beat this team today is simple. You hit C.J. Stroud repeatedly over and over and over again. And Latu in a game like that had 2 assisted tackles, no sacks, no quarterback hits. They needed some, like, the thing about this too is, like, he's got 5.5 sacks this season. I just looked it up. At one point they had 6, but they must have made a stat correction at some point. He's got 5.5 sacks. He has the 3 interceptions. He's been more productive than he was last year, but it's not enough. It's not what they needed. And, like, he was a first-round pick. Kwity Paye was a first-round pick too, but at this point, I think the Colts know what Kwity Paye is. He's not a force edge rusher. He's a guy that you ideally would probably take off the field in third down. Latu was the guy that Anarumo, that Steichen, that Ballard said, what's going to be better about the pass rush this year? How do we get better on the pass rush? Latu's going to take a step forward. You can't have a game like this. You just can't. You have to be in Stroud's face all game against the Texans offensive line that I still don't think is very good as a pass protecting offensive line. You don't have DeForest Buckner. Like, he's the only guy that scares you consistently in this Colts pass rush. And they've gotten some decent seasons around the margins. Like, their backup defensive tackles both have more than 3 sacks. That's great. You have to have the force player, like the real true player with Buckner out. And Latu was supposed to be that guy anyway. Like, he can't have a game like that, like he had today, where he was mostly non-existent. And C.J. Stroud, I honestly think C.J. Stroud was less accurate than Daniel Jones was today. I thought Jones played pretty well to maybe preview another category. I haven't figured that out yet. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't think C.J. Stroud was really better than, like, I thought he was worse than Jones. I thought he was more erratic, made worse decisions. But he had a ton of time back there to sit and run around and wait for somebody to come open. And Latu's the guy who's got to. He's the guy who's got to be the pressure guy.
Yeah, when you watch a game like today, it very much feels like he's a guy that's much more suited for that, like, Robin role on a defensive line that has DeForest Buckner, who's getting double teamed all the time, and he can go in there and clean lots of things up when there is a lot of attention being played to Buckner's direction. And when he's the only guy out there, yes, I mean, he has gotten some sacks and had a tip ball interception with Buckner not on the field, but you don't have anywhere close to the level of fear when you hear his name and you're team on the other side of the ball and you're thinking, oh man, we got to face that guy today. I mean, there were some incredible guys that the Colts offense faced on the other end. I mean, we saw some amazing bull rushes. One of Tanner Bortolini that sticks out in my head today from the couple stars on that Texans defensive line. And you just don't get that same feeling when you're thinking about or talking about or imagining how this Colts defensive line without DeForest Buckner is going to attack a team. It just doesn't really feel like a group that's going to get a whole lot of a push. It does feel like a group that maybe if the secondary forces the quarterback to hold on to the ball long enough, they can get home, and that's how they have been able to sack the quarterback. The couple times that they got there today, the handful of times that they got to Patrick Mahomes a week ago, it just kind of seems like that's really the only way, especially without DeForest Buckner in the lineup, that they're going to be able to get home. And Latu's the guy that you wouldn't rely on to change that narrative, and we just didn't see that today.
Yeah, they need, if this team is going to beat back the bad vibes and win the AFC South the way they started out the season, he's got to be much better than he was today.
My unsung villain, not one specific player, but it was more an idea or a theme that we saw far too often on the offensive side of the ball today for the Colts, and it's drops. There was you can make an argument that the last play of the Colts offense today, Michael Pittman, a ball that hit him in the hands, you can argue whether that's a drop or not. I think you and I both fall on the same side that if you're an NFL receiver and you get two hands on the ball, it's just a ball that you got to catch. Josh Downs had a couple big drops in the game. There might have been another ball that got to Pittman's hands that he missed. It just felt like, and there were a lot of either unforced errors or just errors alone that held the Colts back today. And surprisingly, a handful of those came on balls that this team just should have been able to reel in. And for a team that is struggling so much right now to sustain drives, when your running game clearly is not running on all cylinders and you've got a little bit of a hobbled quarterback, as receivers and pass catchers, you just can't. This offense can't afford guys to be missing balls that they should be reeling in. And that just seemed like it was far too often a theme that we saw today. Daniel Jones, I think, finished 14 for 27 for 201 passing yards. By no means a spectacular stat line. And I think it's something that we'll get to later on here in this podcast. But it just wasn't something that a performance that really worried me. If you just opened up, the stat sheet and looked at it, you think, man, Daniel Jones had a horrible game. But if you throw, let's say, 5 of those balls and turn them from incompletions to completions, and all of a sudden he's 19 to 27, then you've got a pretty solid day. And maybe tack on 50 extra yards, and this game feels very different. And that was just something that happened far too often from far too many guys. To be able to sustain an offense that's not nearly otherwise performing at the level that it was a month ago.
Yeah, I thought a lot about those last 2 plays for the offense. A lot about the Pittman play. I think if you watched it, just the first play, you felt like Jones threw it high. When I watched it again and again, it felt like Pittman should have caught it. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're the go over the middle contested catch guy, which he's supposed to be. But the real bad drop is Josh Downs on 3rd down.
Yeah.
He's in the open. He has time to make the catch, probably still get the first down, extend that drive. Maybe they get on, score a touchdown. Maybe they win this game. It's a really bad drop. There's no way around it. His first drop wasn't good either. It was a ball on a 3rd down that would have kept the team's opening drive alive. But it was it was still not this one where he's set up. It's like he's catching it on the jugs machine, and he just lost it. And I just feel like when I look at the end of game offensive situation, like, why didn't they score? That's it. That's all I got for you is Josh Downs should have made that catch. Once he didn't, Michael Pittman had to make the next one.
Yeah, I mean the Downs one, when you are needing to score a touchdown, and you can't just rely on a field goal. I mean, that one almost compounds itself a little bit because now you're 4th and 9. The Texans can bring some quick pressure, force the Colts to get the ball out early. You have to come up with 9 yards, and when you're needing a 9-yard pass play, and the team's going to bring a ton of pressure, and you got to get the ball out super quick, you don't have a ton of options. And one of the few that you do have there, where you feel, if this guy reels this ball in, he's gonna at minimum pick up the 9 yards we need, is that kind of somewhat shallow to medium crossing route that we saw there from Pittman. You don't have a whole lot of options, and we saw in Kansas City last week there were a handful of times where the Colts missed on a somewhat similar play like that to get either guys like Pittman or other players on that roster. It's not going to always be the easiest completion to make. You're likely going to have a guy kind of draped all over the back of you, and it's going to be thrown quick and hard, and the timing is not always going to be 100%. I think it looked a little bit like maybe Pittman was a little bit late getting his hands up, maybe a little bit late starting to look for the ball, and there was just a lot of small things about that didn't go quite right. And when you miss that easy catch on third down and you need a touchdown, all of a sudden you go from, maybe 4th and 2, or maybe you get a first down. All of a sudden 4th and 9 feels super daunting. And it was one of the many moments that the Colts couldn't come through on Sunday.
Who do you have for hero of the game?
Hero of the game. I felt like this was a game where Alec Pierce was one of the few members of that Colts team that really shined in just about every single way. I mean, it was amazing. He was getting asked about even in locker room media scrums with guys on the defensive side of the ball because of him standing in on that Hail Mary at the end of the first half and knocking the ball down, in a situation where it looked like if he had not been instructed to knock the ball down, he might have been able to pick it off and make a run at a pick six there. But this was a game where finally, with a little bit more time to operate, Daniel Jones was able to find him in some really big moments. And there was even one there where I feel like, I don't know that you want to rely on this, but this isn't a bad way to go about your offense every once in a while. When you throw a deep ball up and you feel like your receiver in Alec Pierce has a good shot of catching it, but even if he doesn't, like that, there's also going to be a decent shot that he gets defensive pass interference called. I'd love to see the Colts, if they have time in the pocket, take some more deep shots, because we both saw today that Pierce can high point some balls when they are on target from Daniel Jones, and he had some really great throws today. I don't know that will get remembered enough from today's game, but Daniel had some spot on throws, and Alec made some pretty unbelievable catches today. One of them on a 19-yard, I think it was in double coverage, kind of like a back corner of the end zone fade, and just made a great jumping backwards catch that I feel like not a handful, well, maybe only a handful of players in this league can make, and he's one of them. And he really, really shined and is continuing to prove why it is going to get really expensive to try to keep him on your roster if he does not have a new contract worked out in the next couple months.
It feels like to me that the number one receiver on this team is Alec Pierce now.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that can do the most stuff. If you don't go with Pierce as the hero of the game, it gets really tough, because it's tough to give one to a defensive player, even though they only gave up 20 points. And then the offense had its worst in terms of scoring game of the season. You could go Cam Bynum here with the interception. He had a tackle for loss. Maybe not perfect with some of the stuff that went on over the middle. But I guess kind of by default, I'll go Cam Bynum, because that interception came on the play after Tyler Warren fumbled a quarterback sneak. That was a chance for the game to get away. Bynum's pick kind of keeps them in it. Not a perfect game by any means, but I think in terms of in a game where there's not a lot of clear heroes, maybe that's a quick one to just kind of throw out there.
Yeah, and this is it continues a streak. I know it was being asked about in the locker room, and I apologize for not being certain on it. I think the Colts they are either one of a few or the only defense in the league that has continued to get at least one takeaway in every single game this year. Cam Bynum continues that streak, however short of a list that keeps them on, and it just kind of continues. Again, I think I've said it on this podcast a couple times. I know Lou Inarumo doesn't like it, but like this just kind of continues to be a group that is not going to get to the quarterback super fast, is going to get home a couple times a game, is going to make a big splash play for a turnover once or twice a game, oftentimes in some fairly big responsive moments. It's not a group that is going to threaten you, at least in the current iteration that we've seen. And again, it is one that is fairly banged up. Not one that is going to, I think, give you massive headaches throughout a game, but is one that can always get home maybe when you expect it least. And Cam Bynum came up with that play today. My unsung hero hinted at it a little bit. Daniel Jones did not have a perfect game today. Hard to when you only barely complete over 50% of your throws, but it felt like this was a game where Daniel Jones did what was needed from him to win this game. Again, if you have maybe 4 more completions off of some of those drops that his teammates had today, all of a sudden you're looking at a 67% completion rate. You're maybe right around 240, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's a lot more reasonable when you're going up against the best defense in the league. And it just kind of felt like he did enough where there's going to be lots of attention, lots of talk about how he was under pressure or what he looked like given his reportedly fractured fibula that he's going to continue having to nurse very well, potentially through the end of the season. I just felt like this was by no means a game where Daniel Jones lost the Colts this game. And it felt like he kind of game managed it, didn't make mistakes. I think he was only sacked maybe one time, didn't have any turnovers. Just a one where he did enough. And sometimes having a quarterback that just does enough to keep you in it against a defense like this is what you want and is reasonable to ask from a guy like Daniel, and he came to the moment.
Yeah, he also had one of his best throws of the game nullified by a holding penalty. And they made up for it on that drive by getting the ball by with the pass interference to Pierce, but
that's right.
No one gets those stats. So if you give him back those stats and that completion to Downs, which was a great throw, I thought he was good today. I agree with this. I thought he was good today. I think unsung, though, I think you have to go unsung because I think there are still some people out there going, Jones wasn't good enough. I just don't think this is. I don't think this is the game for that take. There have been other games where I felt like that was a game for it. This one I thought he was pretty good. My unsung hero is going to be the defensive tackle group. Colts only had 5 quarterback hits. 3 of them were by defensive tackles. They had 2 sacks. Both of them were by defensive tackles. Adetomiwa Adebawore and Chris Wormley. Grover Stewart batted a pass in addition to a quarterback hit. Neville Gallimore had 4 tackles, none for loss. But here's the thing: these guys, you only got 2 sacks on a guy who holds the ball forever. Both of them by your defensive. Your 2 best rushes were by defensive tackles, including one you just got elevated from the practice squad. These guys are not supposed to be carrying your pass rush with DeForest Buckner out. They're supposed to be, kind of making a play here or there. And the fact that their play here or there was the pass rush today is an indictment on the edges specifically, and kind of the blitz too. It felt like the blitz wasn't very good today, but at least from a subset of those guys, I think they did their job. And if you look at the Texans' rushing yards, they get over 100 total. They get 108 yards. But it took them 34 carries to get there. That's only 3.2 per carry. Neither of their running backs was over 4. I just think the defensive tackles, for not having DeForest Buckner, did a pretty good job for that defense.
That's a good one. I would agree. Your number of the game.
I'm kind of stuck on this because it just feels like something that 0 sacks, quarterback hits for Latu, and really for I think any defensive end not named JT Tuimoloau.
Sounds right.
The JT Tuimoloau had two quarterback hits, no sacks or quarterback hits for any of the other defensive ends. It's just they only gave up 20 points, but in terms of process of the game, what you watch, what could be bad going forward, 0 edge production is something they just can't continue to have.
Yeah, mine is 3.7. That is the number of yards per carry when you look at this team's last 3 losses combined. I believe it's more than 50 carries for Jonathan Taylor, going for something like 188 yards over the losses at Steelers. at the Chiefs, and then this home game today against the Texans. Again, great, like very solid defense, solid to great defenses that you're talking about there. But this is a guy that was averaging through like the halfway point of the season 6.0 yards per carry against good defenses, bad defenses, and wins and a loss to the Rams. And by no means does this just rest on his shoulders, but with Jonathan Taylor and the skill position guys blocking and the offensive line and something about the play calls, this whole offense is just not operating the way it was a month ago. And those rushing stats, I think, tell a major part of that story. We know well that Shane Steichen's mantra is you throw to score and you run to win. And so the fact that the run game has not looked super great outside that Atlanta game for more than a month is not just telling about that run game alone, because the pass game hasn't been great over that same stretch as well. But that was something that you felt like if the Colts could ever get a lead or just get a little bit of an edge, that they could ride that run game to the finish line. And we just haven't seen that. And it's been telling too that on days where the passing game maybe is missing something here and there, that they can't kind of flip that around and ride that run game and rely on it if the passing game isn't perfect. And that's it's seeming like an increasing problem, and one that I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't know how that gets better. It's kind of wild just how different Jonathan Taylor has looked over 3 of the last 4 weeks compared to how this season started. Again, some of those games were against much less than stellar opponents, but he was just putting up these otherworldly numbers. And it is just very clear that he's not going to be just, automatic 100+ yards, automatic have 1 or 2 carries for 25 to 30 yards every single game. They are going to have to really work to get that run game into a rhythm. They're just way too many that are going for 2 yards, 3 yards, 1 yard loss. Like it's been so difficult to get even like a 4, 5, or 6 yard run over these last several games. And that just puts that much more pressure on the passing game, because if you're doing that on first down, you're only picking up a couple yards, and then you're on 2nd and 8. And then all of a sudden, if you have an incompletion, then you're at 3rd and 8. And this is, we've seen far too often over the last 3 or 4 weeks. This is a team that, if the pressure is ratcheted up a little bit, is not the best necessarily at completing those pressure throws with Daniel Jones in some of these situations.
Yeah, I'm interested in exploring that. I think that's a really, really interesting thing to look to. We can try to take a little bit of a break here. Game day observations, some of the fun categories. What's your game day observation from today?
I don't. This is just my second game at Lucas Oil Stadium covering the Colts. So and some of it when we're in the press box, we're covering things. You sometimes, especially for me when I'm writing the quick story, like you're really just like looking at your laptop, and you are some of the finer points of the game and the atmosphere around it, you kind of get lost in translation. But I felt like, and again, this was a game where the Colts lost and they trailed for decent portions of it. I don't know that I felt like this was a home crowd or atmosphere that was nearly as like fiery and advantageous for the Colts as one might expect. Again, this was a tough game. There were some really tough moments. There were tough stretches there for both sides of the ball, offense and defense. They were trailing for decent portions of it, but I just don't know that I felt like this was a home crowd that maybe gave the Colts quite the advantage that you would hope for if you were returning home to Lucas Oil Stadium for the first time in more than a month. I don't know if that squares up with anything that you felt or remembered or experienced from this game, but that was something that kind of stood with me a little bit. Like it almost felt like those refs you suck chants at the end of the game in the fourth quarter were like the loudest that building got. Again, a lot of emotion pent up in those moments, but that just kind of stood out to me a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Lucas Oil is I've been in it a lot, so I think I'm probably not. I think sometimes I don't have a good handle on what's different or what's not. So
Mhm.
it's interesting to hear the outsider, or not outsider. You're an insider, but for your second game,
Yeah.
your perspective on the crowd. I think I'm gonna just kind of double down on that. I had some funny stuff for this, but I like the that's the first time in a long time that a crowd has been that angry at the refs.
Mhm.
I mean that was sustained from the Moore call through the end of the game.
Yeah.
Sustained booing, sustained chanting, every break in the action, And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I'm not saying they were wrong to feel that the crowd was wrong to feel that way. Just like, yeah, they were upset. You guys were upset. Get it? I get it. And very very sustained on the refs. Now, three football things that give me joy. Um, in a kind of downer podcast, hopefully this lifts everybody up just a tad. It was a holiday week after all. Number one football thing that gave me joy: Alec Pierce with just an excellent Hail Mary defense at the end of the half. Alec Pierce does lots of things that are really impressive, but you put him back there for that Hail Mary situation, you think, yes, he should be back there. He's so good on the ball. And he was really good on it again. You broke on it really hard, got up, knocked it down, probably wanted the pick, if we're being honest. He's probably upset that he didn't get the pick. I joked in the press box that's because he was running the wrong way. He's not used to going up for it, coming forward. He's going backwards.
It's true.
But yeah, just fun to watch a really great athlete make the play in that situation.
Yeah. Mine kind of gave me half joy. I enjoy when you have some like high pressure moments and you see what teams come up with. I enjoyed the idea that the Colts were trying something that wasn't just like a normal um, draw up the middle or something around the end or a pitch play or something when they had that 4th and 1 that turned into a fumbled snap from Tyler Warren that was very clearly unsuccessful. I don't know that I like that call in that situation there, but I like the idea of coaches being aggressive and trying to pull something out of their bag. Something that you would hope you've been working on a decent amount that is a little bit cleaner than what we saw there. But I like those moments in a game where you feel like you see something starting to develop and you realize it's not just a traditional play that we see fairly often. I just don't know that call specifically there was necessarily the one for the moment.
My only thing is I saw a lot of people talk about it as a trick play. It's a sneak.
It's not. Yeah, it's a different.
Just because a different person ran it doesn't mean it's a sneak.
The pre-snap stuff is the different part. Like once the ball is snapped, and that was where the issues arose. Like that's it's a fairly normal play there, but it's interesting to see, what they had cooking there. You would hope that Tyler Warren would be able to hold on to that ball. I still don't know that he was going to have the push for it anyways there to pick that up. And you wonder if that's what you're going to. You very clearly are not going to rush it with Daniel Jones with his injured fibula. You probably
especially because Daniel Jones is very good at sneaks.
Yes.
So obviously you couldn't run it with him. The Packers and Ravens both use their tight ends regularly, and using Warren as a guy who played a lot of quarterback at Penn State makes sense. I think the pre-snap stuff makes sense. I saw a lot of people be like, it was a trick play. A quarterback sneak is not a trick.
No, agreed. That's fair. What's your second football thing that gave you joy?
The touchdown pass to Tyler Warren. They motion him. He's lined up in like an H-back, wing-back spot where they've used him in a lot of fun ways this season and make you wonder what's going on. He motions back to the offset eye. I would bet the Texans are thinking run at that point. And instead they use the I think it might have been the sail route that they've used before. he gets wide open, the touchdown. All of that stuff where they use the fullback, where they use some of that stuff is really interesting to me. So that's a football play that gave me joy.
Yeah. My second one was the Colts' other touchdown of the game. That ball from Daniel Jones to Alec Pierce, again, double coverage, back left corner of the end zone, falling backwards. It's the type of um, like that type of guy that I hear folks describe a lot doesn't make that throw. And it was a great throw, and it was a great catch. It's the type of connection that you wish you saw a little bit more often. Again, you're not going to throw it 20 yards downfield all the time, but man, when he and Alec Pierce connect on a perfectly placed ball, and Pierce high points it, it's just a really awesome thing to watch. And the fact that it came through for a touchdown pass was that much sweeter.
Yeah, the third football thing that gave me joy. Josh Downs kind of had a rough day with the drops, but also the catch he made going out of bounds. Any play that it feels like, how could he possibly have gotten his feet in? And then it turns out he did get his feet in, and the Colts weren't sure because they ran up to it and snapped it real fast, but he was in by a lot. Any play like that, I think live those things are different than they are on TV. And I obviously watch a lot of football live. You watch a lot of football live now. There's like once a week in a stadium where I feel like a receiver makes a catch and I'm like, how did they catch that? There's no way he got his feet in bounds. And then it turns out he could have gotten 3 feet in bounds. Like that is a pure football thing that gave me joy. Just how cool is it that he got his feet in?
Yeah. My last one on the other side of the ball, but Nico Collins touchdown run right around the left side. Really great play there by the Texans, using his speed as well as someone who has really great vision. It wasn't just like a dead on sprint from the moment that he grabbed the ball right after the snap to run straight to the pylon. Did an awesome job letting that play develop, let some of his blocks come into motion. Not every single guy, especially a wide receiver, is going to be that patient on a play like that. It was definitely a veteran move to just kind of let that come into place, and then being able to sprint it out, beat some Colts players to the pylon. That was a big conversion there. And that was, again, 4 plays after the very controversial 3rd and 15 defensive pass interference. If that call on the field is made, then that touchdown isn't scored and things will look very different. So it was, so massive for the Texans to be able to convert there, turn that into a touchdown and give them that 7-point lead that, when it got on the board, did feel fairly big. It didn't feel like that was a situation where the Colts just were going to be able to automatically come back and strike. So it's props to him for putting those 7 points on the board.
Football things that don't give me joy is awful pass interference calls.
Very true.
The defense has it hard enough as it is. Just like, as an NFL, can we not do this?
I like that.
That gets us to the sort of the more serious stuff. Too much blame, too little blame. Who do you have for too much blame for today's game?
Too much blame. I think it's Daniel Jones. We've talked about it a lot, so this doesn't have to be long here. I don't think this is a game that Daniel Jones lost you. I'm sure there's moments he could have been better. I think there are probably some moments where his reportedly fractured fibula could have kept him from trying to get out of the pocket, and maybe he's feeling like he kind of just has to stay planted in there and can't buy himself time, can't roll out to see if some better windows develop. There's probably something to that, but again, I just don't feel like Daniel Jones made mistakes that lost the Colts this game, and I do think with what has been written and reported on over the last 7 days since we, really since the Chiefs loss, when we started to realize what an issue this might be for him. I just think an outsized proportion of that blame is going to fall on his shoulders over the next day or two, and I just don't know that that's necessary.
My too much blame is Shane Steichen as a play caller. We've already kind of gone through the Warren thing. Like, I get it when you're putting a player in a position he hasn't been in before. Like that, this is part of Warren's package, is that he's supposed to be able to do this stuff. To me, a lot of the offensive stuff today is less about the play call than the execution.
Yeah,
like that one, just Warren has to get the snap. He's been great. He's been a fantastic rookie tight end. I think he should be in the Rookie of the Year discussion. I haven't really looked at it lately to know who else is in there, but he should absolutely be in the Rookie of the Year discussion. He can still screw up. He screwed that up. You just got to take the snap. The completion, the plays on the last two plays of the game. I know someone was like, "Why did they throw at Derek Stingley on the last play of the game?" Well, Pittman was he was open. He got his hands to it. The downs play, he's wide open. I just think you can't get mad at him for not sticking with the run today. They stuck with the run. It just wasn't very successful until the last couple of drives. I don't know that. I think sometimes. I think that what most football fans do is that any play that doesn't work is a terrible play call. Any play that does work is a great play call. Or honestly, a lot of times, if not a great play call, the player just made a great play. Mm-hmm. But I think that this game, to me, a lot of it came down to Colts personnel not living up to their reputations or not making the play that they're supposed to make in the right situation, more so than the play call.
Yeah, too little blame.
Too little blame. The offensive line. The Indianapolis Colts offensive line is not getting enough blame right now. They only gave up 1 sack, and so I think maybe people aren't paying as much attention. It's easier to look at the quarterback. You mentioned the run game issues. That's a big part of that is the offensive line. They had too many backer run-throughs against Kansas City today. There were a lot of first down runs while Shane Steichen was trying to make sure Taylor got enough chances that didn't go anywhere. That he didn't really have any room to run, and also some penalties in there. Just I think that over the course of this 4-game stretch, the offensive line outside of the game in Berlin, and even that one there was a ton of sacks and blitz pickup issues, has not been what it was supposed to be. And it's the thing that no one's talking about with the offense, but the thing that probably matters a lot.
Yeah. Too little blame for me. Certainly by no means his fault, but I think because it's something that happened in the first quarter. And when you look at the totality of everything that happened afterwards, the loss of Sauce Gardner for basically the entire game, really, really tough blow there for a team that is coming into the game expecting to have 2 all-pro corners at their disposal when you've got some solid pass catchers around an incredible talent like Nico Collins. And when I got the sense, we don't know for certain, but I got the sense both from talking to Sauce before the game earlier this week as well as post game, that might have been mostly his assignment going into the game, depending on the situation. And so when you lose him and all of a sudden you're Lou Anarumo and you have to completely set fire to your original game plan and go to kind of a backup situation, not only with the players that you have on the field, but maybe who is guarding Nico Collins. That can be a bit of an issue. He didn't go crazy. I think he had 5 catches for 98 yards in that touchdown there. But that's when you're talking about those massive amounts of time that CJ Stroud had to be back there in the pocket. You think even if there were moments where he felt like he had to get the ball out quickly, but there was a window open. If you have a guy like Sauce there, just as another member of the secondary, I think that probably does get a little bit more difficult and maybe allows that defensive front 7 to get home another time or two. And you wonder what the game is look like. It's just hard to imagine that not mattering at least a little bit. And in a game as tight as this, it seems like that could have certainly had some effect.
Yeah. I think that in going forward, I think that's also going to be something that people might, like I said, I think their two best defensive players are hurt right now.
Yep. Agreed. And guys on different levels. Like it's one thing to be out two good corners, but that I feel like in some way that can only kind of be so bad. But when you're missing a key player on both sides, and we talk about how complementary a good defense plays between in passing downs, the pass rush, and the in the secondary, it's a tough position to be in when you don't feel like you can get a great pass rush and you're missing one of your key guys that can really make it tough to get the ball into an open window.
Yep. That brings us to the last couple categories here. One to throw away and one to go on. What's one thing to throw that we're talking about now? One thing to throw away that we're talking about now that we maybe won't be talking about the rest of the season.
Maybe not exactly what this category is meant to be, but I think you can certainly throw away any idea that the Colts are going to be in the running for the top seed in the AFC. That's not something that we necessarily were talking about a ton going into this game that we should, that we should continue to, but it's something that was still kind of somewhat in the conversation. And I just don't see a situation where this Colts team rebounds to a level where they can be in the running for that, especially when you look at, for example, the schedule of the New England Patriots. They are 10-2 right now and get a chance to play the Giants tomorrow night on Monday Night Football, and then they have a bye. So they are likely to be 11-2, and they would be then at that point 2.5 games ahead of the Colts. And if the Colts are not able to win at Jacksonville next weekend, they would be 3 back with only 4 to play. I just don't feel like that's realistic anymore. And it's a shame because it did very much feel like it was in the cards a month or so ago. And you started to wonder, group that could avoid playing in cold weather conditions, could play at home with a postseason starved crowd. It seemed like a situation when this offense was high flying that could be the makings of a Super Bowl run. Still don't necessarily know for certain that they can't make it there yet, but it's going to be a lot more difficult and large in part because they are not going to have those benefits that you would get as a number 1 seed.
Yeah, my one to throw away is the NFL's referee accountability system. It's terrible.
It's bad.
It doesn't explain anything to anybody. Like it doesn't. I just don't understand. I get it. I kind of just feels like the NFL is like we're the most popular league. We can get away with it whatever we want to. It's ridiculous that there's not more accountability in one way or the other, and that even the pool report system where we have one person who has to gather everyone's questions and try to get those done is not ideal to me. So I would love to throw that away.
Sounds good to me. One to go on. I think this team's inability to win often enough on either line, offense and in terms of the run game, defense, and just in terms of especially the pass rush. I think those are going to be things that we are going to continue talking about. It seems clear enough over these last couple of games that those are areas where when this team is struggling a little bit, it's because opposing offenses have quarterbacks have lots of time in the backfield to find open windows, and there are games where Jonathan Taylor is just kind of struggling to find momentum. There are this is not to say that every single game when the Colts run game looked fabulous, that he was always getting a minimum of 5 or 6 yards a carry, but just as often as he was getting 2 or 3, he was getting 7 or 8. And then there were going to be a time or two a game where he popped a 25, 30, 35 yarder, obviously sometimes longer than that. As we saw in my first game against the Titans back on October 26th, when he, ran that for 80 yards and a couple weeks later ran another one for 83 against the Atlanta Falcons in Berlin. We just are not seeing the Colts win often enough on either side of the ball in those situations. And, it's the simple part of the game. We talk about those battles in the trenches, and you start to wonder if this Colts team is capable of winning those battles often enough to make the type of run in the postseason into January that we thought that they were once kind of like odds-on favorites to be looking at.
Yeah, that's good. My one to go on is the kicker thing is not over.
Yeah,
even if Michael Badgley's gone, even if they bring in somebody else, we're not done talking about the kicker this season. And that sounded ominous. It was because it was.
Yeah, I mean kicking should not be such a frequent part of post game conversations. It's just because even like your kicker's not going to be, winning you multiple games. It's kind of like officiating. Like you don't really talk about it unless it's bad. Kicking, unfortunately, especially in the place kicking part of it, you're not going to talk about it with this frequency if it's going well, and it's not. And like you said, barring someone who's available on the market right now, just like having an out of body experience and having an incredibly hot 6 or 7 week stretch, which you just can't really bet on. This is going to be an issue now. Is this a Colts team that just starts going for it every single time you are, inside the opponent's 50-yard line, in opponent territory? I don't know. I don't know that that's necessarily a great thing either when you have a defense that has some holes in it too. So this is going to be something against great opponents that I think we probably will talk about a time or two more this year. And if we are, it's probably unfortunately going to be about the Colts on the wrong side of it.
Oddly enough, the Colts are 92% on field goals this year. They're 23 of 25.
Wow.
You combine Schrader and Badgley. But here's the thing about Badgley missing these 3 extra points. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know here. You don't feel like you can trust him field goals if he's shanking extra points.
No, like if you're Shane Steichen, you're all of a sudden, if you're getting to say the 25-yard line and you're thinking, I've got 4th and 3, or I could kick a 43-yarder, like you're really struggling. Like those decisions are becoming more difficult, and you're having to weigh a lot about when you are in the game and how much you're down and what your defense has been looking like. And all of that is just a lot to make a decision on in 40 seconds or so of game clock. And that's just not a situation you want to be in. You want to, with a kicker, you want to be confident every single time they step on a field. And if they make a mistake, if they miss one, every single player on your team isn't going to be perfect every single time they step on the field, but you want to have faith that they can do it every single time that they're out there, and the Colts are just not in that position anymore.
Yeah, the saying is take the points, but when the decision doesn't become take the points, when the decision becomes go for it, or well, maybe he'll miss it, that's when it feels like you have to make the change.
Yeah, and when you've got a quarterback and just kind of an offense as a whole that isn't operating the best in blitz or high pressure situations, and a run game that when push comes to shove, pardon the cliche, can't always get 2 or 3 yards, that starts to become a problem that almost compounds itself a little bit.
Yep, this was a long one, but it was that kind of game. Lots of stuff happened.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to chat about once we get to Wednesday's podcast, as we look ahead a little bit to Jacksonville Jaguars coming up again on Sunday afternoon. Lots of stories, I'm sure, to follow tomorrow about the kicking situation. I imagine hopefully we get another update on the health of Sauce Gardner and some additional questions to be answered as we get a chance to talk to Shane Steichen for our Monday afternoon press conference. Be sure to head back to IndyStar.com. I think we both have stories that are additionally posting in the morning with some big picture looks at at today's game. Hope you guys continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to wherever you get your podcast, wherever you are listening to or consuming this podcast. We appreciate your support there. Appreciate your support reading our stories or subscribing at IndyStar.com. And we hope you guys will be back for another edition of the Colts Cover-2 Podcast here on Wednesday. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys then.